Okay, welcome to another EA Zoom meeting. I'm Bradley Naragon. Today's talk is called Shadows of Jupiter in Libra. And I gotta apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so I might blow my nose and I sound a little funny, but yeah, thanks for joining us. And I'm gonna share my screen now. And this is gonna be in the spirit of the times here. This is a bit of an experiment in the sense that, oops. Okay, there you go. A bit of an experiment because I pitched this idea and I said, let's give it a try. So this is actually, I've been working on an article for like 2 or 3 months now. And this is the first half of the article. So put to pictures. So it's almost like an audio article with a slideshow for the first part. That's going to run us about 35 minutes or so. And then we'll open it up to any questions you might have. And we can go back and visit any part of it at that time. If you want me to go back and look at a certain slide or just ask a question about an idea. So having said that, this is a little bit different in the sense that I'm actually reading you the slideshow and we'll see how it goes. Okay. Shadows of Jupiter in Libra. And oh, hold on a second. The real title is Zeus, You Asshole, The Shadows of Jupiter in Libra. I have this opening joke. So Zeus walks into a bar, looks around and says, wow, look at all the women I could have sex with. And then, did I just say that out loud? Hey, if any of you heard that, and go tell Hera, I'll send you straight to Tartarus. Do not pass Ares. Do not collect 200 Athenians. Zeus, you asshole, the shadows of Jupiter in Libra. While Zeus is popular for his greatness and beneficial influence in Greek culture, it's hard to really know what the people of ancient Greece thought of him. While Zeus was one of many deities in ancient Greece, he was the one with the elevated status of ruling Mount Olympus, where most of the gods and goddesses dwelled. Zeus existed before ancient Greek cultures and can be traced back to the sky god Daius. I'm not sure if that's pronounced correctly, which goes back to Indo-European cultures. The name Daius has roots in Germanic, Latin, Indo-Aryan, Ironic, Baltic, Celtic, and Slavic languages. As one of the original sky gods of the conquering patriarchal tribes, Zeus's stories demonstrate that the hypocrisy that permeates patriarchal cultures. I have Rick Riordan, author of the famous Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, to thank for reminding me that the Zeus in myth really was a total jerkface. Quite frankly, Zeus's childish behaviors are quite outrageous, masquerading sacrilege as entitlement. If you hear of someone constantly pursuing sexual conquests which they lie about to their partner, if you hear of someone full of self-importance and desiring to be in power and control while sidestepping the responsibilities through blaming others, someone scheming to maintain their own universe regardless of the impact on others, you would say that person's acting like a complete asshole. Zeus, known as Jupiter in ancient Roman culture, is an astrological archetype most popular as the Great Benefic. In evolutionary astrology, Jupiter is associated with honesty as well as dishonesty, truth as well as distortions of truth, two sides of the archetypal coin. The Jupiter Sagittarius 9th house archetype correlates to natural laws. In its shadow, it correlates to all the distortions of man-made religions which twist human understanding of natural law with false stories of what is true. As the planet Jupiter transits Libra, it's a great time to ask what opportunities Jupiter in Libra represents. Due to layers and layers of patriarchal conditioning, most all of us face distortions and shadows of this archetype within our consciousness, within the world, and within relationship. What are the shadow expressions of Jupiter in Libra, and how do we shine light on these shadows? As above, so below captures the astrologer's underlying understanding of the universe. We don't need to fully grasp how it can be possible through repeated correlation and observation between phenomenal reality and astrological charts. We have witnessed that indeed the universe is holographic. The above or heavens somehow mirror the below or events on earth. Even the events and energy shifts within the psyche of every living being and creature. Similar to the heavens mirroring the mundane, the changing stories, myths, religions, and spiritual traditions within cultures reflect how cultures change and evolve or devolve as the case may be. For example, cultures with monotheistic religions dominated by one male sky god reflect gender inequality, hierarchical social structures with the leaders in positions of power far removed from the people they serve or rule, and institutional oppression. In comparison, a polytheistic cosmology is less linear, dualistic perspective, which reflects greater cultural acceptance of differences. A culture with a cosmology inclusive of the divine, feminine, and masculine with different yet equally important roles in the spiritual drama reflects cultures where we're more likely to find empowered positions in society for both genders, or there once was at the origin of the spiritual traditions. Cultures with stories and religion, including androgynous characters and/or deities, reflect greater understanding within the culture that gender identity is more diverse than a binary classification based on physical form. On and on, we see cultural norms, social structures, laws, and the resulting power dynamics reflect the changing stories, myths, and religion being passed on through generations. As we explore Zeus, let's keep in mind that A, myths and religion are not static, and B, evolving myth mirrors cultural changes. The birth of Zeus and the acculturation of the Minoans. It is on the island of Crete that Zeus has his birth within the mythology of Mycenaean Greeks, first appearing in texts around 1400 BC. The rise of ancient Greece was at a time when patriarchal cultures were continuing to acculturate, twist, and obliterate traditions of goddess worship, older traditions rooted in cultures living in harmony with natural laws. In Rianne Eisler's The Chalice and the Blade, she explains that the Minoan civilization of Crete was the last civilization in the region, still defined by partnership, sharing, and equality, a culture where the feminine was empowered and the goddess worshipped. In contrast, the Mycenaeans, who took the island of Crete as their own, were a warrior elite society that had developed rigid, hierarchical, political, social, and economic systems. Exploring the circumstances and cultural changes around the birth of Zeus provide us clues to the shadow expressions of the Jupiter archetype. From the research I have done so far, I believe that the conquering Mycenaeans used the divide and conquer strategy, taking core aspects of the goddess in Minoan culture and dividing them into new characters and stories within their own evolving mythology. After all, this is the way of patriarchy. Zeus gives birth to Athena out of his head. I see Zeus's daughter Athena as the patriarchal approved replacement goddess, being given a few of the Minoan goddess's characteristics. For the few descendants of the Minoans who were not killed by the Mycenaeans, they still had one figure to look to as a symbol of feminine power. Similar to how the Mother Mary in Christianity becomes a symbol of the Great Mother, an unofficial goddess within Christianity. Meanwhile, the truth became more and more obscure in the heaps of past devastation. As the Mycenaeans took over Crete, the most visually potent symbols of Minoan spirituality, priestess images and figurines with snakes, are transformed into the Gorgons. The Gorgons of Greek mythology were the three, quote, terrible sisters with snake hair, the most famous being the mortal sister Medusa. The subversion of Minoan culture is reflected in these extreme twists and turns in the feminine and masculine roles within their cultural stories. And so in Greek myth, we have Athena emerging as a motherless daughter of Zeus, who aids the so-called hero Perseus in slaying Medusa. After splitting up the Minoan goddess, we then have one part of the divine feminine disown and aid in killing a disempowdered, twisted version of its former self. These changing myths connected to Zeus's rise to power reflect the changes in culture, power, and society at that time. In The Masks of the Gods, Volume 3, Joseph Campbell describes the legend of Perseus beheading Medusa as a symbol of the goddess temples being overrun and the priestesses being, quote, stripped of their Gorgon masks. He says these masks were used as faces to frighten others from the past ways. In Campbell's words, quote, that is to say, there occurred in the early 13th century BC an actual historic rupture, a sort of sociological trauma, which has been registered in this myth. The Mycenaeans succeed in making the goddess less central to culture, primarily through raping and pillaging. They created the goddess Athena as a warrior. Furthermore, Athena and Zeus both wear the aegis, a shield with the head of a Gorgon used to scare anyone who dare associate with the former ways. Symbolically, Athena is only associated with the former goddess as a co-conqueror of her. In the bigger picture, Zeus's emergence in ancient Greece symbolizes the continuing cultural transition in humanity toward men using force to become the holders of knowledge and power, aka patriarchy. Jupiter, the archetype. Within the evolutionary astrology paradigm, the archetype of Jupiter, Sagittarius, 9th house, correlates to story, storytelling, beliefs, religion, truth, law, natural law, nature, paradigms, cosmologies, myths, everything we're talking about here. At its root meaning, Jupiter, Sagittarius, 9th house archetype correlates to how the right brain takes in all the left brain information from the senses and gives meaning to perceived phenomena by fitting it into one's present understanding of life. Story is one of the best ways to weave together and hold many little pieces of a puzzle. This archetype also correlates to the intuition. How sometimes we just know things, but maybe we lack the words to describe it or lack evidence to show where this knowledge comes from. These knowings may be true for the individual, yet may or may not be ultimate universal truth. Within evolutionary astrology, the relativity of what is true correlates to Jupiter, Sagittarius, 9th house, and ultimate truth correlates to Neptune, Pisces, 12th house archetype. In seeking the ultimate meaning of life, Neptune, we make sense of what is happening as best we can understand, Jupiter, relative to the limits of our consciousness. Neptune correlating to consciousness. Saturn, Capricorn, 10th house, correlating to the boundary between the conscious mind and the subconscious and collective consciousness. Uranus, Aquarius, 11th house, correlating to the individual subconscious. And Pluto, Scorpio, 8th house, correlating to how expansive or limited the consciousness is, i.e. the evolutionary state of the soul, within ego form, Moon, Cancer, 4th house, South Node. Changing the story. When life's experiences bring something that doesn't fit into the believed story, stories naturally change and evolve. This changing aspect of the Jupiter Sagittarius archetype highlights its mutable modality. Potentially, the changing story represents growth. Jupiter representing increased understanding, the ongoing natural process of growth and expansion of consciousness. Sometimes the struggle to make sense of an experience goes unresolved. One may fall into confusion and disillusionment. Neptune, Pisces, natural square to Jupiter, Sagittarius. This loss of meaning also results in the Neptunian Piscean disassociation. Often when tragedy strikes, we lack a larger framework to see the ultimate meaning of the present unfolding story. The natural zodiac's last quarter square, Sagittarius square Pisces, represents this crisis in consciousness. That moment when we say, I don't know what to believe anymore. It is natural that we seek the ultimate meaning of the unfolding story of our lives, Neptune, Pisces. It is natural that spirituality, Neptune, Pisces, enters into the individual beliefs and understanding, Jupiter, Sagittarius, in attempts to make sense of the universe. Time, Saturn, Capricorn, and the resulting objectivity, Uranus, Aquarius, are two naturally occurring phenomena that allow us the chance to eventually understand from a bigger picture perspective, Jupiter, Sagittarius. On the flip side, time, distance, and objectivity can lead to rewriting the story to the point we lose the original lesson. Sometimes distance and time are the reasons stories get forgotten or lost, to be relived again and again. For old stories, the modern context can easily read a different meaning, missing nuances and understanding of the place and time from which they emerged. Larger themes persist in a soul's individual stories, as a soul can replay over and over the same behaviors before significant change occurs. The same is true for the collective of humanity. Our stories slowly change as we slowly evolve and make the effort to learn what life is teaching us. Of course, the other way stories get changed is through ill intent via lying, destruction, manipulation, and concealment of the truth from others. A few of the shadows of Jupiter in Libra. Exploring the shadows of Jupiter in Libra. Exploring the shadow expressions of an archetype typically leads us back to the root ways an archetype's expression is out of harmony with natural laws. Conversely, understanding of the root of the archetype will help us to be aware of the potential distortions and shadow manifestations. Whichever way we approach it, the resulting expanded awareness allows us to be more conscious of how to live in harmony with our authentic self and return power to the places knowledge and power has been removed. To understand the shadow of Jupiter in Libra, it is important to understand that cultural transitions all over humanity for thousands of years represent a violent yet gradual shift toward males in society holding knowledge. Knowledge, Jupiter, is power and evolution or devolution, correlating to Pluto, Scorpio, 8th house. For centuries and centuries, some men in positions of authority and power have continued to strip away power from women in societies by taking away traditions of knowledge and healing. In an infinite variety of ways, from infinitesimal to titanic, from conscious to ignorant, in past lives and present, incarnating in one gender or the other, we've all participated in this larger drama within humanity. Blaming men in general for all of this is a gross simplification of this devolutionary phenomena. With that in mind, it's true, women have been stripped of power and forced to live divorced from sacred traditions deeply rooted in healing knowledge and feminine wisdom. Women were sages and healers, gatekeepers at the doorway between the worlds, midwives of birth and death. This story has been rewritten by men who believe they shouldn't have social positions of power and authority. From men becoming head of families and tribe, to becoming rulers, to becoming owners of land, to scribes changing texts and scriptures to remove women from his story, to all bishops and priests using power to cast judgment, carry out punishments, to the crusades, inquisitions, and witch hunts. In so many small and enormous ways, this tragedy stains humanity's past, present, and future. If you listen, you may hear the echoing of these wounds through space and time. Your heart feeling a pain we don't know how to hold. The goddess within weeps. Even in the last decades, removing women from positions of power has continued in some of its grossest forms. In the 20th century, male doctors becoming authorities on childbirth, while a consensus majority of women grow in fear of what to expect when you are expecting. The image of a woman in labor on her back, powerless and reliant on the specialization of the male doctor in a sterile man-made facility, is the epitome of how far we have fallen, a complete reversal. How far we have fallen in this age of ignorance. On and on, the changing of the story through hiding information, through lying, through mental, verbal, emotional, and physical abuse, through rape, torture, and killing, The nature of evil to insert fear into the hearts of the dissenting. Anytime we see an imbalance of knowledge used as power over others, we are bearing witness to the shadow of what Jupiter in Libra represents. A term becoming more popular, which reflects a shadow expression of Jupiter in Libra, is mansplaining. Mansplaining is when a man confidently explains something, typically to women, acting as if or assuming the other is ignorant of the subject. Episodes of mansplaining feel condescending and or patronizing to women present. As a result of centuries of patriarchal conditioning, men have been deeply conditioned to act as if they understand things and can explain things. When men speak up to explain something ahead of women, it reinforces the unspoken pretense that women present are not as intelligent. Often, a man doesn't intend to patronize. This conditioning is so deep that the behavior comes out without awareness. We participate in mansplaining when we allow this behavior to continue as okay and normal. It is a greater risk to address this behavior if you are not a man. Witnessing this and saying nothing perpetuates patriarchy. It's important work, especially for men, to speak to this and increase awareness. In the vein of compassion, let's remember there are risks to expose patriarchy behavior, whomever you are. Sometimes men don't call out other men due to fear. And sometimes those of us who see it in ourselves lack the courage, strength, and honesty to address this within our own life. Even if we freeze in a moment, future opportunities to revisit and address these behaviors will come. Libra in shadow is passive. Keep smiling, keep things pleasant, quickly glossing over the inappropriate, staying silent to avoid disrupting the surface harmony. In many circumstances, this behavior condones patriarchy passively by not calling it out, by pretending the behavior is normal and pretending it doesn't have the emotional impact it's really having. Today, these deep, deep layers of conditioning within the consensus patriarchal cultures teach boys and girls that males are smarter, stronger, and better, showing up in subtle and overt ways. All of us have our own innate knowledge, which is a valuable gift when shared. Part of this continuing problem is culturally valuing logical intelligence and verbal linguistic intelligence over other forms of intelligence. Our whole education system in modern culture devalues most other forms of intelligence, especially interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, and emotional intelligence. This shadow of Jupiter in Libra is cast early on in development when there's no praise or acknowledgement for the feminine wisdom we all possess. Another shadow of Jupiter in Libra is believing you have nothing to learn from others. Instead, others end up needing to learn from you. It is quite common that this expresses as believing one has nothing to learn from people in different realities, whether it be a difference of gender, race, class, age, and or ability. So full of one's own understanding that one believes they already know. Grandfather of evolutionary astrology, Jeffrey Wolf Green, summed up the crux of patriarchy with the expression, "I'm right and you're wrong." And another shadow of Jupiter in Libra is lying to others, dishonesty in relationships. Most people can remember at least one time in their life where they were not honest with someone about something significant, and it ate at them on the inside. There's many types of lying and liars, of course. Some people lie occasionally to avoid responsibility, a lie to get out of fear of judgment, consequences. Some people are simply compulsive liars, more secure in lying than speaking the truth. Excuse me. Most damaging to society and others is the sociopathic liar. These are people who lie in all sorts of ways, whether it be lies of omission or commission, to gain personally at others' expense. They're so good at lying. Most people don't know when there's part of the story that was added or left out, exaggerated or fabricated. These are the proverbial wolves in sheep's clothing. Overall, Jupiter's transit of Libra is a time to ask ourselves if we have been and are willing to be honest with those in our life, even if it will disrupt the apparent harmony. With Jupiter in Libra, we may expand into the social arena, growing through the synergy of shared ideas, opinions, and values of those we are in relationship with. It's important to remember the balance this experience by bringing in our own opinions and motivations. There could be key moments where we pull back and withhold something out of fear of disrupting a building synergy. The Aries polarity to Jupiter in Libra, highlighted by Uranus and Eris presently, is calling us to disrupt as needed for authentic growth to occur. There are those who just can't stop themselves from being in teacher mode, and there's those who keep themselves in the student, counselee, and or apprentice role due to believing one lacks knowledge and skill. They are never ready or good enough. But the never ready or good enough story is the Virgo complex. The natural square of Virgo to Sagittarius correlates to overdoing something, compensate for what one believes they lack. So when we consider the extremes of Libra, Jupiter in Libra also means the possibility of swinging to the extreme of seeking answers outside of oneself. This could feed into codependent relationships or unhealthy dynamics in the student-teacher or counselor relationship types. This constant stepping away from sharing one's own knowledge could provide more fuel for those who should shut up, but keep blabbing anyway. Just saying, it could happen and probably is. Another thing to watch for with Jupiter in Libra is too much sharing with others, too much social activity, overgiving in its many forms. As much as giving is a beautiful thing and feels good to be able to give something to others, it is appropriate to reflect on the motivation to give and share. Are we authentically giving? Or is it out of a sense of social obligation? If we feel we fell short in the past, there could be an impulse to make up for, compensate for it by going big now. The greatest present we can give is presence, honestly showing up for those in our life. shining light on the shadow. In evolutionary astrology, Jupiter in Libra correlates with the understanding that there naturally exists a diversity of beliefs. It is natural and healthy to have a diversity of paths on the journey of life. Jupiter in Libra represents an opportunity to listen to and learn from others' stories. Also, Jupiter in Libra is a call to share with others your own knowledge and understanding. The spirit of Jupiter in Libra is that we are all here to learn from each other. We all possess different types of knowledge. A positive expression of Jupiter in Libra at a collective group level is a shared vision. The nature of evil is seen in this present collective dynamic as the force that divides people in groups, the force that keeps consciousness fixated on the differences, and the inner propulsion to fixate on the past to the point we can't open up to the present. This is the force that makes it seem impossible for us to ever be on the same page. We are witnessing extremes of beliefs and perspectives being expressed more than normal. Some of this is coming from self-righteous projections of judgment onto others. The tension of judging others or being judged by others correlates to the natural square between Libra and Capricorn. Jupiter in Libra squaring Pluto in Capricorn activates this dynamic in the present times. The nature of evil is to use this present tension to create an increased sense that there exists greater division and polarization than actually exists. When we get stuck in this dynamic, we forget the diversity and complexity of the now. In this process, it becomes easy to project onto others stories being woven which make things two-dimensional and lead to our own inner judgments. The key thing to keep in mind is that things are always more sophisticated than they will be presented as. People are complex creatures. If we swing to the shadow of being extreme in relationships and or our social awareness, we may default to projecting and simplifying, creating divisions and distance in our own hearts. With that in mind, one of the things Libra energy will do that is not helpful, as mentioned earlier, is keep things too pleasant, a surface harmony that is not real. How we evolve with Jupiter and Libra is through the Aries polarity, specifically at this time, the archetypes of Uranus and Eris in Aries. To truly learn from each other, things need to get shaken up a bit, breaking the facade of peace. That ends part one of this. So I wanted to open it up to any questions at this point.
That was amazing, Bradley. Thank you so much. Could you please press stop share and then we'll
right.
the panel. That's okay.
Yep.
I think we have a few questions prepared.
Stop share. Okay, there I go. Thank you.
Okay. So, any questions?
Hi, Bradley. I wanted to ask, what do you encounter in yourself as patriarchal conditioning that relates to this topic?
Thanks for asking that question. That's a hard question to ask because it requires me to be pretty honest. But I will say that I feel like I encounter all these things in myself, and like, you know, it's like, especially in terms of the inequality in relationship, um, with gender, a lot of the male conditioning, um, you know, it's like, I'm not immune to it. And through my own experience and my efforts to be aware of these things, I know that at times we think that we know ourselves, and something that's unintegrated can surface, and the intention is to have integrity by integrating it. But there's, you know, like, how we do that is, you know, it just comes out in these really subtle ways, and I think that's where I see it as a shadow, is that it's so subtle that a lot of times we don't see it, and then at some point we realize, wow, I just said that as if you didn't know what you were talking about at all. Or, you know, like, creating that very subtle sense of, I have more knowledge than you, or devaluing someone else's awareness, or because they understand and learn in a different way, but then casting judgment on that, stuff like that. I could keep going, but do you want to follow up with anything on that?
Well, I can definitely relate to that. I sort of have this archetype with Jupiter and Gemini. It's in the 12th, with Mercury being conjunct Saturn in the 7th. So I related a lot to what you were talking about.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I mean, it's that natural square to Libra Capricorn. I know Jeffrey Wolf Green relates the Capricorn archetype primarily to patriarchy, and of course, naturally, you know, like, all these things are merging into each other, and so we see the distortions of the archetypes, you know, within all of them. And so just hearing you say that, Saturn and Mercury conjunct in the 7th house, immediately I'm aware of having experienced the extremes within 7th house relationship, you know, of you know, others presenting as if they know, with the Saturn authority, and just the overall devaluing of feminine knowledge. So yeah, I can get that right away. That I mean, my understanding of, and I guess this is kind of a question to go back to you, would be, my understanding of the intention of that would be like, right, so we'd be asking ourselves, like, why am I experiencing people in my life who are you know, mansplaining, who are, you know, acting like these jerks that they know, who are condescending, these types of extremes of this conditioned behavior, and seeing it in those really subtle ways. And I guess, and so my question back to you would be, is that about, right, so like coming into your own authority with voice in relationship, I imagine?
Definitely, because I have the South Node in the 3rd. So yeah, and Mercury is retrograde, so it is definitely coming into my own voice and saying, hey, I know what's, you know, I have an opinion on this. My opinion matters. And just because you are a male, and also this, I see this a lot as far as the generational wars. You know, a lot with older people automatically discounting a younger person's knowledge just because they're younger. You know, and that definitely ties into the Saturn part. You know, where, you know, because I'm older, I've been on this earth longer, you know, I know better. And the only thing that states is you've just been on this earth longer. It doesn't mean that you know more.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I've got a question, Bradley. What would an undistorted matriarchal Zeus look like, do you think?
Well,
it's the same person. Let's say it's Zeus, rather than being conditioned.
Okay, so okay, that I'm going to take it this way. I'm going to say, you know, like Zeus was given a lot of power, right? I mean, obviously, you know, the story that I was relating was that Zeus's rise to power just reflects what was going on in the culture, that this dominator culture is taking over. But let's say that Zeus was given this position of power, you know, as ruler of Mount Olympus, and he wasn't a jerk about it. Like, what would he have done differently, right? He, in that case, and of course, that, you know, it's like I'm thinking about a Leo sun archetype too, because it's a sense of like, it's a ruling archetype. And so kind of going back to like what you're given all that power. And so how can you use it? And you basically, I mean, he would have to truly be of service then with that power, of course. And his actions would show that they were working together and that he understood that they were all connected and that his actions actually affected other people. And so there would be stories about him that would represent him actually showing his own humanity and growth of understanding, so to speak, but he's a god. So it's like, he already knows. But, you know, that there would be the inclusion and not the exclusion and all the secrecy and hiding, of course. Yeah.
Bradley,
Yes.
this is Wendy. Makes me think of Virgo, right? It would be like the Virgo archetype, which is a natural square to Jupiter. I don't know. I was thinking about Lynn's question, and the first thing that came to my mind was, well, the name would not be Zeus. It would be something, just the name Zeus is, I don't know, it's very masculine, right? But I don't know. It made me think of Virgo and, you know, cutting down the ego. So, and the feminine, you know, and earth. I liked I liked the whole talk. It was good. It was very interesting to learn that about the Crete, how that happened to the goddess culture there. I didn't know the history of that so well. That was interesting to learn. And what do you think about Jupiter and Libra now? How that's going to play out now?
Oh, geez. Well, you know, it's like, I mean, I tried to get at a little bit in there, and it feels like there's a lot of talk right now of the extremes, right?
Right.
That we're seeing in the world. And we are, obviously. But, you know, there's just like I think there's a lot of really great things going on. With it. And it's like, I guess I wonder how many people are having the same thing happen, where there's the gigantic extremes that we're seeing, and then it's kind of leading us to swing to these extremes or duality. And obviously it's like with all the holy Uranus and Pluto, it's pretty fired up right now. But on that same note, there's just like, I listened to this interview the other day, and I was in tears. And, you know, it's like, because of social media and the internet, there's a lot of people's stories that are coming out there in ways that they just never did.
Mm-hmm.
And powerful. And so I
Yeah.
think that there's like that layer going on with Jupiter and Libra, which is really beautiful. But that, to me, that nature of evil is like swinging it into this dualistic perception of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of get lost in all those other myriad of ways that it's happening. And I think that whole, like, the rise of like mansplaining becoming really popular, I think collectively more and more people are being aware of the subtleties of the conditioning that have led to patriarchy. And because Jupiter represents within Libra an extreme of that, because it's swinging to that extreme, that it's kind of like bringing it all to the surface, you know.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was thinking there's a lot of my friends are going to the March on Washington, the Women's March, and I'm going to be out of town, but I don't even know that I would go. Well, I don't have the energy to go right now physically, but you know, I had such a strong reaction to the election, and I was just having a lot of reaction for the first month or two, and now I'm in this place of, oh my God, it just perpetuates so much duality. And hearing what you just said, it just made me think of, you know, having compassion for people that are just all us really, but for people that only know patriarchy, and that is the way. I mean, and men that are really bound in that, and trying to keep it in check. Not just men, of course. I mean, I think there are plenty of women doing that too, but I was thinking specifically of like domestic violence, and or men that have been on the internet saying, you know, women are not supposed to be leaders and all these things. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's pretty wild how extreme people are in their thinking. It's pretty scary, actually. I guess if we only look at it from a patriarchal perspective, because if I'm looking at it from more of a evolutionary perspective, not even just a matriarchal perspective, that includes compassion, and there's so much other layers to living, right? Aliveness, and people are going at it from one dimension or maybe just 3 dimensions, which is pretty linear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I wanted to kind of continue on with that point. Libra is supposed to be the art of listening. And I think because so many people's situations and stories have not been heard, now that Jupiter is in Libra, all of this stuff is coming out. So it is an extreme. And those people are, you know, they're mad because you've got people who just don't want to listen. So they're getting angry. And, you know, because they feel like all this time they've been playing nice, which is Libra. And they figure, okay, you weren't listening. You didn't want to listen when I was playing nice. So maybe I'll come at you a little bit stronger, then you will listen. And I think that's why, you know, there's so much of this, you know, going on now. Because, and a lot of people who, there are a lot of people out there too who are being compassionate, but you can't be compassionate if you don't listen and take the time to understand where somebody else is coming from, another person's perspective that's outside of you.
Yeah, that's right on. Yeah, and as you probably are well aware of, I didn't talk about it in the first part, but that Aries polarity with Uranus and Eris, um, right, is just it. It feels like um, there's a lot of anger because of how people have had to exist in this world, and the people who have had the privilege of not understanding that haven't really listened and heard those stories, and a lot of those stories are coming out, and there's a lot. My sense is there's a lot, like there's a liberation of some of that anger that's being held in, and a lot of people don't know how to listen to that. They don't know what to do with it, and but yeah, within all of that, I would. Someone just said, you're supposed to feel uncomfortable. That means that there's growth happening, and yeah, that you're right. It's happening. That is a really powerful aspect to this Jupiter in Libra.
Has it gotten to the point, I forgot to check, is it at the, are we at the disseminating square to Pluto and Capricorn? Or has it already gotten to the last quarter square?
It's last quarter, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be the crisis in consciousness.
I don't know if it goes. I think it goes back, but I don't know how close exact it gets to Pluto on its backswing.
Okay.
But yeah. Yeah.
Then when you add in, you look at Saturn being in that atomic phase to Pluto. Yeah, I think that's why it's more visible now than it was in the past, because it's gotten to that point where, and especially with Uranus being in Aries, the dynamite, boom, you'll see it now.
Yeah, these times feel. I wasn't alive in the '60s, but it feels like there's this social, awakening energy that we haven't had since that Uranus Pluto conjunction.
Yes. Yeah, Wendy and I are of that generation. She has if I remember right, she's the balsamic phase, and I'm the new.
Yeah. One thing that I don't know how close we are to ending here, but one woman that has a huge following did her 2017 not prediction. She's not an astrologer, but she's an intuitive, and she was saying that she keeps seeing military tanks on U.S. soil and martial law being instituted because there's going to be so many demonstrations, and some of them are going to turn into rioting rather than staying peaceful, and that there's going to be some real extremes coming, and that it's going to be so important for us to hold the balance, and not go into well, I mean, I have Uranus. I mean, Uranus is opposing my Mars and squaring my Moon, and it's not it's now that it's going direct, it's going to be more exact. And so I'm just laying low from these places because I don't want to be involved in that way. It's enough just, managing everything. But anyway, I'm just bringing that up to say that a lot of what happened in the 60s, it looks like it's going to play out again. And hopefully it's going to, I mean, the 30s and the 60s, right? So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Okay, Bradley, we're at the 1 hour mark. Any other questions from anybody? And I think we're going to start wrapping this down because you have to go feed the children.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to come back to do part 2 and really get into the whole T-square with Uranus and Eris, and some more of how evolution looks within all these dynamics and etc.
That should be fantastic. Any final questions from anybody? Okay, so I'll unmute everybody now to say thank you. Thank you very much, Bradley, and we'll see you in part 2.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Bradley. That was great.
Bye for now. Catch you later.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much.